On the night of February 12, 1976, two-time Oscar nominee Sal Mineo was stabbed straight through the heart in a West Hollywood garage. His cash and valuables were left completely untouched. This was not a random street robbery. It was a targeted hit. Yet, within hours, the LAPD and the tabloids used private photos found in his home to frame his death as a dirty, underground sex scandal. They deliberately humiliated a dead man to make sure the public looked away from the terrifying truth. What was the truth? Just before his brutal murder, Sal Mineo had begun committing the ultimate Hollywood sin. He was naming names. He was officially exposing his highly secret, passionate affairs with the most untouchable A-list actors in the world. Did Sal Mineo's absolute refusal to stay in the closet merely destroy his career, or did it get him killed to protect the studio system's billion-dollar secrets? To understand the specific tragedy of Sal Mineo, we must first analyze the fractured foundation of his beginnings. Born on January 10, 1939, in New York City to Sicilian immigrants, his life was inherently positioned on the margins of the American dream. His father operated as a coffin maker, a detail that carries a chilling, inescapable irony given the brutal, premature nature of his son's fate. His mother, recognizing a raw, undeniable potential in her boy, pushed him into the brutal machinery of acting and dance schools at an exceptionally young age. Picture a child with deep, haunting black eyes and an innate, magnetic charm stepping into an entertainment industry that was already rigidly defined by racial and ethnic hierarchies. Before he even reached the age of 10, Sal was appearing on local television, absorbing the subtle, persistent discrimination aimed at his Italian heritage. The Hollywood system preferred its heroes tall, blonde, and Anglo-Saxon. Sal was immediately categorized as the ethnic outsider, the exotic other, a classification that would permanently restrict his upward mobility. Yet, he possessed a talent so visceral that it could not be completely suppressed. He conquered the New York theater stage, learning early on how to navigate the intense pressure of performance. But he was completely unprepared for the institutional prejudice that was waiting to consume him in California. The detonator for his global fame, and his ultimate psychological imprisonment, arrived in 1955 with the cultural earthquake known as Rebel Without a Cause. This film did not just entertain the masses, it effectively invented the modern concept of the rebellious teenager in the aftermath of World War II. At the epicenter of this cinematic revolution was Sal Mineo, playing the role of Plato, a deeply sensitive, profoundly lonely teenager wrestling with intense inner turmoil. This performance was an absolute revelation. It earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the incredibly young age of 16, cementing him as a global youth icon. But historians and film scholars now recognize Plato as one of the very first coded gay characters to ever appear on the mainstream big screen. Because of the draconian censorship of the Hays Code, the character's homosexuality had to be cleverly masked under a vague veil of intense admiration for James Dean's character, Jim Stark. Sal stood shoulder to shoulder with Dean, the brooding symbol of masculine rebellion, and Natalie Wood, the epitome of youthful beauty. However, the reality behind the camera was heavily contaminated by abuse of power. The director, Nicholas Ray, a man 27 years older than Sal, had explicitly based the character of Plato on his own son. But industry insiders have long documented the dark, predatory rumors that Ray harbored sexual intentions towards Sal, who was still legally a minor. This is the truth connector that Hollywood deliberately ignores. The studio system operated as an exploitative machine where power was frequently weaponized against the young and vulnerable. Sal carried the heavy, silent trauma of this manipulation for the rest of his life. The true danger for Sal Mineo, however, lay in his absolute refusal to suppress his own heart. The chemistry that audiences witnessed between Sal and James Dean was not merely excellent acting. It was the manifestation of a deeply hidden reality. Before his death, in highly private interviews and guarded conversations with his closest confidants, Sal revealed that he was incredibly in love with Dean. This was not a one-sided infatuation. The two engaged in highly secretive, late-night dates hidden deep within the shadows of the Hollywood Hills. James Dean, who aggressively projected an image of untouchable, rugged masculinity, was widely known within elite industry circles to be bisexual. Their relationship was a volatile mixture of intense passion, crushing jealousy, and the paralyzing fear of societal discovery. But this romance was violently aborted when Dean was killed in a catastrophic car crash on a California highway just weeks before Rebel Without a Cause was released. The trauma of losing Dean was absolute. Sal later confessed that losing Dean was identical to losing a physical part of his own soul. This psychological amputation fundamentally altered Sal's trajectory. Having witnessed the sudden, violent erasure of the man he loved, Sal seemingly made a subconscious decision to stop lying about who he was, even though he knew with absolute certainty that this honesty would trigger the total annihilation of his career. The evidence that does not lie resides in the list of men Sal Mineo was linked to, a roster that reads like the absolute royalty of 20th century cinema. The tragedy of Sal's romantic life was that he was searching for authentic connection in a town entirely constructed of mirrors and PR contracts. He engaged in a highly passionate, deeply secretive romance with Bobby Sherman, who was then ascending as a massive teen idol and pop singer. Forensic accounts suggest that Sal actually operated as a guide for Sherman, navigating the younger actor through the terrifying landscape of a same-sex relationship because Sherman was deeply confused and unsure of his own identity. They exchanged secret love letters and arranged highly discreet rendezvous. But the paranoia of the 1950s and 60s made this love incredibly dangerous. The collateral damage was severe. Rumors strongly suggest that Sal's official girlfriend, the actress Jill Howarth, abruptly called off their high-profile engagement after discovering the affair with Sherman. This internal scandal proved catastrophic for Sal. The studio fixers isolated him, actively stripping him of leading role opportunities. While Bobby Sherman was protected by his management and elevated to superstardom, Sal was systematically pushed into the dark. Sal later expressed profound regret, not for the love he felt, but for the devastating professional consequences he was forced to endure alone. The absolute center of this storm of secrecy revolves around the legendary Paul Newman. With his mesmerizing blue eyes and his meticulously crafted image as the ultimate American family man, Newman was at the absolute zenith of his power. During the intense filming of the historical epic Exodus in 1960, whispered accounts from the set indicate that Newman and Mineo engaged in highly secretive meetings. Sal later revealed to close associates that he deeply admired Newman, and that their dynamic had aggressively crossed the boundary from friendship into romantic territory. But Paul Newman was a corporate asset worth millions of dollars. His PR machine was an iron fortress. Newman kept the reality of their connection buried under layers of impenetrable secrecy. Sal was left to suffer in the agonizing limbo of a romance that could never be acknowledged. Elite sources suggest that while Sal was madly, desperately in love, Newman viewed the encounter as nothing more than a passing, experimental phase. The psychological devastation for Sal was profound. Because Newman was the ultimate icon of rugged heterosexuality, any rumor linking the two would necessitate the immediate destruction of the lesser star to protect the greater one. Sal absorbed the entirety of the prejudice. Furthermore, Sal's private revelations touched upon Marlon Brando, an actor whose brooding physical strength and revolutionary acting methods dominated the industry. Brando, who unapologetically harbored his own highly complex sexual secrets, allegedly engaged in discreet dates with Sal during a period when the younger actor was desperately seeking emotional support from established titans. They likely shared the profound, suffocating difficulty of living authentically within a system that demanded a fabricated, heterosexual illusion. But the dynamic was highly volatile, marked by sudden arguments and abrupt breakups, leaving Sal repeatedly emotionally fractured. There are even highly guarded reports indicating indirect romantic connections with Anthony Perkins and Brandon DeWilde, funneling through Newman's social circle. Sal Mineo was not just an actor, he was a living, breathing archive of the most dangerous secrets in Hollywood. And a man who holds the secrets of kings is always a target. Don't forget Courtney Burr, the acting coach who became Sal's final and perhaps most stable same-sex partner. Their relationship lasted 6 years, providing Sal with a crucial emotional anchor during the darkest years of his institutional boycott. Yet, even this sincere love was grotesquely weaponized by the tabloid media after Sal's death, twisted into a sordid scandal rather than recognized as a legitimate, enduring partnership. The systematic dismantling of Sal Mineo's career by the studio executives is a masterclass in institutional cruelty. After his massive initial success, he delivered another staggering performance in the 1956 epic Giant, once again acting alongside James Dean. Playing a young Mexican boy who goes off to fight in World War II, Sal proved his immense dramatic range. But Hollywood had already decided his fate. They weaponized his Sicilian heritage against him. Because he possessed dark hair, deeply tanned skin, and a specific ethnic appearance, he was aggressively typecast. They demanded he Americanize his name to something sterile and acceptable, perhaps Martin or Newman. Sal absolutely refused. He was fiercely proud of his immigrant parents and the crushing difficulties they had overcome in New York. His reward for this ethnic pride was a permanent demotion. The studios relegated him to supporting roles, forcing him to play violent street criminals, rebellious delinquents, or exotic minorities. He was used by the industry to project the illusion of diversity without ever being granted the fairness or the financial compensation of a leading man. He became the Switchblade Kid, trapped in a repeating loop of films like Crime in the Streets, Somebody Up There Likes Me, and The Young Don't Cry. Hollywood explicitly decreed that he was not white enough to be the traditional hero, constantly associating his Italian roots with mafia stereotypes or negative, dangerous imagery. The absolute pinnacle of his artistic defiance and the beginning of his final excommunication from the A-list occurred in 1960 with the film Exodus. Sal delivered a performance of terrifying depth, playing a Jewish Holocaust survivor who had been brutally sexually abused by Nazi soldiers in a concentration camp. He received his second Academy Award nomination for this role. The bravery required to portray this character cannot be overstated. In 1960, the word gay was an absolute taboo, and portraying a victim of male-on-male sexual violence was considered cinematic suicide. Sal acted from a place of genuine, visceral pain. In a shockingly candid interview, he stated, "I was abused like a woman." That confession resonated with a terrifying authenticity. It won him a Golden Globe, but it also terrified the conservative studio heads. They realized they could not control him. The boycott was not immediate. It was a slow, agonizing suffocation. Sal briefly pivoted to the music industry, possessing a warm, seductive tenor voice perfectly suited for the rock and roll era. In 1957, his track Start Movin' exploded onto the charts, selling over 1 million copies. He appeared on television screens, utilizing a magnetic smile and highly energetic choreography that caused millions of teenage girls to absolutely swoon. He earned an Emmy nomination at the age of 18. He was positioned to rival Elvis Presley or Ricky Nelson as the ultimate American heartthrob. But imagine the sheer, crushing psychological dissonance. Standing on a stage with an open-collar shirt, performing the role of the ultimate heterosexual teenage dream, while privately suffocating under the weight of his own bisexual identity and the secrets of the men he loved. When the rumors regarding his sexuality began to permeate the industry, the music contracts simply vanished. The PR fixers deemed him damaged goods. The truth is even more shocking when you analyze his deliberate acts of rebellion in the 1960s. Sal Mineo stopped apologizing. At the age of 21, he began living true to his bisexuality, refusing to engage in the sham marriages that the studios routinely arranged to protect their gay stars. In 1962, he made a decision that guaranteed his expulsion from the Hollywood elite. He posed entirely nude for the artist Harold Stevenson. The resulting painting, The New Adam, was a massive, highly controversial celebration of the male physique. The press dubbed it the largest nude painting in the world. This was not a mistake. It was a highly calculated, incredibly bold declaration of his sexuality and his bodily autonomy. The major studios immediately blacklisted him, denied access to the silver screen. Sal sought refuge in the grueling, unfiltered environment of the theater. In the late 1960s, he directed and produced Fortune and Men's Eyes, a brutal, uncompromising play set inside a men's prison that explicitly dealt with themes of systemic homosexuality and violent sexual abuse. He starred alongside a young Don Johnson, fearlessly tackling material that mainstream Hollywood refused to acknowledge. The play was a massive critical success, proving his undeniable genius. Yet, when the industry adapted the play into a feature film in 1971, the producers deliberately excluded Sal from the project, not even consulting him. It was a vicious, calculated betrayal designed to remind him that he was an exile. The ultimate act of defiance occurred in 1972. In a highly publicized interview with the writer Bose Hadley, Sal Mineo did the unthinkable. He officially and publicly came out as bisexual. His words were a direct, lethal strike against the hypocrisy of the entertainment complex. "I have a girl in every port and a few boys in every port," he declared. He then turned his sights on the cowards who had abandoned him. "Half the gays here pretend to be bi, but it's a survival issue. Some don't have the courage to say they're gay." These sentences were loaded with the heavy, bitter truth of a man who had watched his lovers hide behind their PR machines while he was left to starve. He was exposing the dark, underground world of Hollywood where love had to be negotiated in shadows, and where authenticity was a crime punishable by total career erasure. He famously summarized the brutality of the casting system, stating, "You start how you end. They pay for the first spark, then give no more chances." He was a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. This brings us back to the dark, blood-stained concrete of West Hollywood in 1976. Sal Mineo was 37 years old. He had survived the blacklist. His career was finally showing fragile signs of a genuine revival. He was starring in the highly successful play P.S. Your Cat is Dead, portraying a bisexual burglar, a role that had finally secured him the financial backing to direct his very first feature film. He returned home from rehearsal, parked his car, and walked into his garage. The attack was sudden, silent, and flawlessly lethal. The single stab wound to the heart suggests a highly specific, calculated precision. The immediate aftermath was a masterclass in LAPD negligence and media bias. Because of the nude photographs found in his home, the detectives interrogated only gay men. They were heavily influenced by the unsolved murder of the Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini the previous year, desperate to frame Sal's death as another consequence of dangerous, underground homosexual activity. They actively ignored the reality of the intact wallet. They ignored the fact that West Hollywood was heavily populated by violent drug cartels. The media assassinated his character, reducing a two-time Academy Award nominee to a sordid headline about a gay star killed by a male prostitute. The eventual conviction in the case only deepens the forensic nightmare. 1 year later, the LAPD arrested Lionel Ray Williams, a black man with a criminal record. The entire case rested on the highly questionable testimony of Williams's wife, who claimed he came home covered in blood, bragging about killing Sal Mineo. But the physical evidence completely contradicted this narrative. The eyewitnesses who heard Sal's cries and saw the assailant fleeing the scene provided a highly specific description. They saw a white man with blonde or curly hair possessing an Italian or Mexican appearance. This description did not match Lionel Ray Williams in any conceivable capacity. Yet, the criminal justice system, eager to close a high-profile case involving a discredited bisexual actor, rushed the conviction. Williams was sentenced to over 50 years in prison, but inexplicably served only 10. The glaring contradictions remain unresolved to this day. Forensic researchers point out that exactly 1 year after Sal's murder, another actress was stabbed in the exact same manner, in the exact same West Hollywood neighborhood, using an identical knife profile. Was Sal Mineo the victim of an active serial killer that the LAPD ignored? Did he accidentally witness a high-stakes drug deal in a neighborhood notorious for narcotics trafficking? Or was this an orchestrated hit designed to permanently silence a man who knew far too many secrets about the most powerful men in Hollywood? The truth was buried under layers of homophobia and institutional apathy. Sal Mineo was not merely a victim of a tragic robbery, nor was he simply a casualty of a fickle industry. He was a silent, unacknowledged hero who was systematically crushed by an environment that demanded absolute deception. He operated as a pioneer, walking point for an entire generation of LGBT artists who would follow decades later. In an era where homosexuality was treated as a psychological disease and a criminal offense, Sal refused to live on his knees. The revelations he made before his death, exposing the hidden lives of James Dean, Paul Newman, and Marlon Brando, were not acts of petty revenge. They were desperate attempts to force the truth into the light. His legacy is permanently encoded in the celluloid of Rebel Without a Cause. Plato remains the ultimate cinematic symbol for every teenager who has ever felt discarded, unloved, and terrified of their own identity. Today, we see an entertainment industry where stars can live openly, but we must never forget the sheer, unimaginable courage it took for Sal Mineo to be the first man to step out of the shadows. He once prophesied, "It will change a lot in the future if gay actors come out. We're here and we're staying. No more playing the cliché of killing LGBT at the end of the story." Those words were an absolute mandate. The Hollywood machine tried to erase his history. The LAPD tried to distort his murder, and his former lovers tried to forget his name. But the truth possesses an undeniable gravity. The files have been opened, the names have been recorded, and the blood of Sal Mineo remains a permanent stain on the pristine, fabricated illusion of the Hollywood elite.